Lindisfarne, most commonly known by its nickname Holy Island, is a small little island right off the coast of the northeast of England, being a little island you can walk to by going through Northumbria, unless the tide is high, in which case the road that leads to it, also known as the causeway, will be submerged in water and you'll be swept away by the tide trying to get to it. This place is the main settlement that we are introduced to in this film, and the home of the main characters. A basic rundown of the settlement during 28 years later is that because of its isolation and natural defences, this is one of the few places that didn't get hit by the infected, protecting the people that were homed there as well as being a safe zone for survivors to evacuate to. Most of the houses there seem to be in a functional state, if a bit run down, and they seem to have access to some sort of gas reserves based on their ability to cook food. They have a main hall area that seems to serve as some sort of communal gathering, as seen by the celebration scene, and there seems to be some sort of school area where kids are educated and people are taught about how to do the jobs that are essential to keep the place running. Down from the living area and towards the causeway, we have an area where people bury their dead, as well as the main gate, designed to be another layer of security should the infected or hostile survivors come across when the tide is low. Now, again, I've already talked about this, but these people shouldn't be living here. They should have been evacuated during the initial outbreak when NATO was still accepting refugees, or they would have been found by the US military during their cleansing and repopulation of the country, and they would have been brought into the safe zone scene in 28 weeks later. Ignoring all that, even if for whatever reason they weren't discovered by anyone and were left to their own devices, there was a period of time when there was no infected roaming around Britain for months. They had so long to put up extra layers of defences to protect the island. They could have made a safe zone on the other end of the causeway for people that were being attacked or injured, allowing them to receive shelter, and even if they didn't do anything during that time because they weren't sure how bad the infection still was, they surely would have had time over the decades to slowly go out and build extra security, especially as we see that the people of the island have been trained in warfare to the point a 12-year-old boy is able to fight off a horde. But no one has tried to expand their safe territory at all. They've just set up this first and only line of defense, and that's it. We see later that when an alpha clocks in on where they are, it nearly reaches the gate and could have possibly gotten through it because of its ability to get over the causeway, which is something they should have really thought about considering they know how durable and physically intimidating alphas are. And if it's during low tide and a horde of infected make their way across, they've now got to go through the effort of eliminating them, clean up the area and remove the bodies so they can use the only road onto the mainland, which is extremely risky considering how contagious this virus is. Speaking of the causeway, I find it strange they haven't bothered to implement any sort of pulley system for use in case of an emergency. The common infected, as far as we are aware, are unable to swim. It would be even harder to swim during high tide, and they don't really have any sort of tactical skills. So if they added some sort of rope going along the sides of the gates that you can use by either holding onto it or shimmying across, or you can just wrap it around your waist and pull yourself through the water, they would be a vital system in saving the lives of people being pursued by threats. But again, no one has bothered to implement anything like this despite how useful it would be. Jamie and Spike could have gotten home sooner if this was available, but it wasn't, and so they had to wait in the house, leading to the Alpha managing to find and use a deer herd to destroy their shelter and nearly kill them because the causeway isn't ready for them to use properly. So, the main gate. The actual gate part of this is a decent defensive measure, being a solid wooden door that can only be opened from one side, with a bar that can be placed to lock and reinforce it, and a watchtower for people to sit and guard the causeway, as well as a mounted crossbow to eliminate threats. But I mean, look at the sides of this door. It's just a few pieces of wood with massive gaps with a few strips of barbed wire going in between them. It might be useful for stopping a stray straggler from getting through, but if a horde of these things ever come across it, it looks like this wall would just topple over from the pressure of them going up against it. Never mind having an alpha there, who would presumably be able to rip these walls to shreds. Now onto the weaponry of the village. Due to the lack of access to metal and factory produced materials, they are forced to rely mostly on wood and string. This can be good for ranged weaponry, as they are able to make bows and arrows, weapons that can be easily produced, silently take out targets from a distance, and you can reuse the arrows when low on ammunition. What I don't understand is their close range range weaponry. There's this constant emphasis on the fact they've devolved back to the Dark Ages, using weapons and tactics their ancestors would have used to fight in their battles. And yet, they don't seem to have any weapons for when their bows become useless. You'd think that spears would be mandatory to take with you, some sort of sword that allows you to quickly swing at them before they get close to you, or even get some sort of spiked shield that would block blood while impaling the infected who land on it. But no, the only weapons you're given for dealing with this devastating virus is a pocket knife, the smallest, least effective melee weapon in existence that can only be used by allowing the infected to get right on top of you. A small child trying to fight off even one infected with the pocket knife is basically just a suicide attack, considering the infected have the speed, strength and reach over him, and I genuinely cannot believe that after all these years, this is what they decide to give him. Speaking of which, let's talk about the roles in this community. Over the years, this community has had to adapt and take on more practical skills that would help them to survive, and we see a list of job roles, from seamsters to woodcutters to farmers. But you know what job they don't have? The one thing they absolutely should have been teaching people but for some arbitrary reason have decided not to? A doctor. You would think a society where all the major medical infrastructure has gone to shit and you now live in a world without strong pharmaceuticals, it would probably be a good idea to educate a few people on the island how to be doctors so they can actually survive in this new world, whether it be through the textbooks or by learning from the doctor that they did have during the early years of the infection.
We don't have a doctor. I haven't had a doctor here in forever.
This knowledge would have been vital in this world as it's their only way of spotting disease and potentially curing people. But instead, a doctor just isn't a thing anymore. They had one doctor who died a few years ago and then they just decided fuck it and didn't bother trying anymore. Meaning that by the time the main plot rolls around, Spike decides the only option he has to try and cure his mother is by visiting Kelson and dragging his mother outside the safety of Holy Island. It's not like Kelson needs a lot of information out of Isla to make a diagnosis. He just does some basic checks on her, especially around her throat, and figures out what it is. Something that could have been done in around 5 minutes in the comfort of their own home if this society, that emphasised doing whatever it takes to survive, bothered to actually go out and recruit people for one of the most vital roles in the post-apocalypse society. So, they have done absolutely nothing to expand the safety of their borders. They seem to have just put up the most basic security measures and called it a day, and then a community that is isolated from the world and relies on their own independence decided to not bother recruiting someone into one of their most vital roles in existence. They then decide they have no problem of sending children out on suicide missions for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Now, I have absolutely no problem with the idea they send out their younger members into the mainland to try and see what it's like to survive out there, especially in terms of killing the infected and learning how to take a life. The problem is the fact that these people, who seemingly run this community, would decide to allow Jamie and his 12-year-old son to go out onto the mainland when Spike is nowhere near ready for this. These people are responsible for keeping everyone in this community safe, and yet despite acknowledging that Spike is a lot younger than what they would usually allow to go out onto the mainland, who is still very undertrained and physically inept to take on the infected if they get close, and on top of the fact they know about the alphas and how it's basically a death sentence for people unprepared for it, they still choose to let him go. These people know about alphas, they know they hunt in packs now, and they think that one man is going to be able to kill these infected if they try and kill him and his son. They nearly die several times because of Spike's inability to really do anything, and the only reason they don't is because the infected are really fucking dumb in this movie. The final point I want to emphasize is that the people in charge of the watchtower are made extremely inept at the end of the movie for no reason whatsoever. I can understand why they would have fallen asleep during the night time. The infected are active during the day now, so presumably they need to sleep during the night, cutting down on when they'll be attacked. And thanks to the causeway, they don't need to be as alert because most of the threats won't be able to get to them. The problem I have is that the guards should be on high alert for a short while now. 2 of their people nearly died and an alpha almost smashed down their door because the people on watch weren't watching. And shortly after this, 2 of their residents ran onto the mainland and could return any time. And considering one of them is a young boy and the other is a very ill woman, they should be alert to help them as soon as they can spot them. Despite that, when Spike returns to deliver the baby to the community, no one is bothering to watch the causeway apparently. He just walks straight across, puts the baby on the door and then just walks away. And either no one was there watching the door or no one bothered to take Spike in. both of which is severely problematic considering how much activity there's been around the community over the past few days. So yeah, this community is a lot more flawed than you would expect for a group of hardened survivors that have been living here for decades and adapted to living in a constant war. Almost like it doesn't make sense and their competence is determined entirely by what's convenient to the plot. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. I also have a Twitter and occasionally I do live streams. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day and hopefully I will see you in the next video.